The harsh summer sun beat down on Colton Hayes as he rode across the dusty plains of Oregon Territory, 1854. His weathered face bore the marks of a life spent under open skies, his 32 years carving lines around eyes that missed little. A week's journey separated him from the nearest settlement, and the silence suited him fine. Until he saw her. She was slumped against a large boulder, her dress torn and dirty, her face pale despite the heat. Even from a distance, he could see the swell of her belly beneath the faded blue fabric. Pregnant, alone, in trouble, Colton dismounted quickly, approaching cautiously as not to frighten her. Her eyes hazel with flecks of gold followed his movements, but she made no sound, no attempt to flee or call out. When he knelt beside her, he saw her cracked lips, the signs of exhaustion and thirst etched across her delicate features. "Madam," he said softly, reaching for his canteen. "Here, drink slow." She accepted with trembling hands, taking small sips as he'd instructed. He noticed bruises on her wrists, dirt beneath her fingernails. Her honey blonde hair hung in tangled disarray around shoulders that seemed too slight to bear whatever burden had brought her here. "Can you tell me your name?" Colton asked, scanning the horizon for signs of whoever might have abandoned her. She opened her mouth, but only a hoarse sound emerged. Tears welled in her eyes as she placed a protective hand over her rounded belly. "You don't have to explain a thing," Colton said quickly, his voice gentle but firm. "Not now. Not ever if you don't want to, but you need help and I aim to provide it." Relief flooded her face as a single tear tracked down her dirt-smudged cheek. "I'm Colton Hayes," he continued, unscrewing the lid from a small tin of salve in his saddlebag. "I have a cabin about 3 hours' ride from here. Clean water, shelter, food. Can you ride with me?" She nodded weakly. "Good. I'm going to put this on your lips first. They're badly cracked." He carefully applied the salve, noticing how she flinched slightly at his proximity but didn't pull away. Trust was a fragile thing, especially out here. "Let's get you on my horse. I'll walk alongside." He helped her to her feet, steadying her when she swayed dangerously. Her frame was light in his arms as he lifted her onto his bay gelding, arranging his bedroll behind her for support. As he adjusted his hat and took the reins, she reached out unexpectedly, touching his arm. Her lips moved, forming words without sound. He leaned closer. "Lily," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Lily Lawrence." "Miss Lawrence," he acknowledged with a slight tip of his hat. "Let's get you somewhere safe." The journey to Colton's cabin took longer than usual as he led his horse at a gentle pace, mindful of his passenger's condition. Occasionally, he glanced up to check on her, finding her either watching the landscape with wary eyes or dozing fitfully, one hand always protectively cradling her unborn child. By the time the simple log cabin came into view, nestled against a backdrop of towering pines with a small stream nearby, the sun was beginning its descent. The structure wasn't grand, just a main room with a stone fireplace, a small separate bedroom Colton had added 2 summers ago, a covered porch where he often sat watching thunderstorms roll across the hills. But it was solid, secure, and right now, that's what mattered most. "Here we are," he announced softly, helping her dismount. Her legs buckled immediately and he caught her weight against him. Without hesitation, he lifted her into his arms, carrying her toward the cabin. "Let's get you inside." The interior was simply furnished but tidy. A rough-hewn table with 2 chairs, shelves lined with provisions, a few books, a comfortable armchair near the fireplace, and a cot in the corner that served as Colton's bed. "You'll take the bedroom," he said, carrying her through the main room toward the small addition. "I'll sleep out here." The bedroom contained a proper bed with a straw mattress covered in clean linens, a chest for clothing, and a small window overlooking the stream. He placed her gently on the bed. First, water and food, then rest. Everything else can wait. He returned with a cup of water, helping her drink before preparing a simple broth. As she sipped it slowly, color gradually returned to her face. When the cup was empty, her eyelids grew heavy. "Sleep now," Colton said, taking the cup. "You're safe here." As he turned to leave, her hand caught his wrist, surprisingly strong for someone so weakened. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice still raspy but clearer than before. Colton nodded, a gesture that conveyed both acknowledgement and promise. He closed the door quietly behind him. Outside, he tended to his horse, unloaded his supplies, and settled into the routines that marked the end of his days. But this evening was different. Questions crowded his mind as he prepared his bedroll near the fireplace. Who had left a pregnant woman alone in such wilderness? What circumstances had brought her to such desperate straits? And what would happen when she regained her strength? Morning came with the chirping of birds and golden light filtering through the cabin's small windows. Colton had been awake for hours, having slept fitfully. He checked on Lily twice during the night, finding her deeply asleep, her breathing steady and strong. He was frying bacon and heating coffee when he heard movement from the bedroom. Turning, he found her standing in the doorway, one hand braced against the frame for support. She'd washed her face with water from the basin he'd left, and combed her fingers through her hair, which now fell in soft waves around her shoulders. In daylight, despite her ordeal, he could see she was beautiful. "Good morning," he said, keeping his voice casual. "Hungry?" She nodded, making her way carefully to the table. He pulled out a chair for her, noticing how she moved with deliberate care, one hand supporting her lower back. "How far along are you?" he asked, placing a plate before her. 7 months, she replied, her voice stronger than yesterday but still quiet. "Maybe a little more," he nodded, serving her bacon, beans, and a thick slice of bread he'd baked 3 days ago. "Eat what you can. Don't rush." They ate in companionable silence for several minutes. Colton didn't press for information, though curiosity burned within him. Finally, she spoke. "I ran away," she said simply, looking down at her plate. "From my husband." Colton's jaw tightened. The bruises on her wrists made more sense now. "Oregon City," she continued. "We arrived with the last wagon train. Thomas, my husband, he." She faltered. "You don't have to explain," Colton reminded her gently. She looked up then, eyes clear and determined despite her weakness. "Yes, I do. You deserve to know who you've brought into your home." He inclined his head, indicating she should continue if she wished. "I married Thomas in St. Louis. He seemed kind, charming, said he had prospects out west." A bitter smile curved her lips. The journey revealed his true nature: drinking, gambling, his temper. Her hand unconsciously touched her wrist where the bruises were darkest. Colton remained silent, allowing her to tell her story at her own pace. "When I discovered I was with child, I thought perhaps he would change. Instead, he grew worse. Accused me of." She swallowed hard. "It doesn't matter. 3 nights ago, he beat me badly, said he'd kill me once the baby came, that he wouldn't raise another man's child." "It's his?" Colton asked, the words escaping before he could stop them. "Yes," she said firmly, but he convinced himself otherwise. "I fled that night with nothing but the clothes I wore, walked for 2 days before my strength gave out." She met his eyes directly. "I would rather die in the wilderness than by his hand." Colton nodded once, his face grim. "You won't do either, Miss Lawrence, not if I have any say." "Lily," she corrected softly. "Please call me Lily." "Lily," he agreed, rising to pour more coffee. "You're welcome here as long as you need. It's not much, but it's safe." "Why?" The question was direct, her gaze searching his face. "Why help me? You know nothing about me." Colton considered his answer carefully. "Out here, folks help each other. It's how we survive." He paused, then added more quietly, "And I know what it's like to be alone when you need someone most." Something in his tone must have revealed more than he intended, for her expression softened with understanding. She didn't press for details, respecting his privacy as he had hers. "Can he track you here?" Colton asked, returning to practical matters. She shook her head. "I don't believe so. He's not a tracker, and I crossed the river twice. Besides," her hand moved unconsciously to her abdomen, "he assumes I couldn't have gotten far in my condition." "Good, still, I'll keep watch." He glanced outside at the clear morning. "Today you rest, regain your strength. Tomorrow we'll figure out next steps." "I don't want to burden you," she began, but he silenced her with a raised hand. "You're not. Now I've got chores to tend. Make yourself at home." The next week fell into a rhythm as natural as the stream that flowed past the cabin. Lily regained her strength gradually, sleeping less during the days, helping with simple tasks around the cabin. Colton noticed how she seemed to bloom under safety and kindness, like a flower long denied sunlight suddenly given warmth. He learned she was 26, educated by her schoolteacher father, skilled with needle and thread. She mended his shirts without being asked, her stitches neat and even. In return, he hunted fresh game, gathered wild berries that grew nearby, showed her which plants could be used for medicine. They shared stories over evening meals carefully at first, then with growing ease. Colton told her of his years driving cattle from Texas, of the ranch he'd hoped to build before losing his savings in a bank collapse back in '49, of coming north to start fresh. He omitted the darker chapters of his past, the wounds still too raw to expose. Lily spoke of her childhood in Pennsylvania, her journey west, her dreams of a home filled with children's laughter. Neither mentioned her husband, though his shadow lingered in the way she sometimes startled at sudden movements or sounds. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching fireflies dance above the tall grass, she asked, "Have you ever been married, Colton?" He was silent for so long she thought he might not answer. "Once," he finally said, his voice low. "Her name was Catherine. Fever took her and our unborn child 5 years ago." Lily's hand found his in the gathering darkness, a gentle pressure of understanding. They sat that way until the stars emerged, neither needing more words. The next morning, Lily woke to find Colton preparing to leave, his rifle slung across his back, provisions packed. "Town," he explained, noting her questioning look. "We're running low on supplies, and I need to check if there's been any word about you." Fear flickered across her face. "You're going to Oregon City?" "No," he reassured her. "Smaller settlement called Riverton, about a day's ride north. Your husband won't know it." "I'll be back by tomorrow evening." He hesitated. "Will you be all right alone?" She squared her shoulders. "I'll be fine. I know how to use a rifle if needed." He nodded, impressed by her resilience. "Bolt the door after I leave. Don't open it for anyone but me." After he departed, Lily busied herself with tasks around the cabin. She baked bread using the last of the flour, swept the plank floors, and washed laundry in the stream, hanging it to dry in the summer breeze. Physical activity felt good after days of recovery, though she was careful not to overexert herself. As dusk approached, she bolted the door as instructed and settled in with one of Colton's few books, a collection of Shakespeare's sonnets with a cracked leather binding. She marveled at the unexpected discovery, wondering about the complex man who had saved her life. The sudden sound of approaching hooves jolted her from her reading. Rising quickly, she extinguished the lamp and moved to the window, peering cautiously through the gap in the shutters. Relief flooded through her when she recognized Colton's broad-shouldered silhouette in the moonlight. He was back early. She unbolted the door, words of welcome on her lips, only to freeze as another rider emerged from the shadows behind him. Colton's face was tense, his movements stiff as he dismounted. "Lily," he said carefully, "this is Dr. Samuel Whitaker from Riverton. I've asked him to come check on you and the baby." The second rider dismounted, revealing a gray-haired man with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles. He carried a battered leather medical bag. "Miss Lawrence," the doctor greeted her with a slight bow. "Mr. Hayes was quite concerned about your welfare. I hope you don't mind my intrusion." Lily looked to Colton, who nodded reassuringly. "He's trustworthy," he said quietly. "Please come in," she managed, stepping back to allow them entry. While Colton tended the horses, Dr. Whitaker examined Lily in the privacy of the bedroom. His hands were gentle, his questions professional yet kind. When finished, he smiled. "Your baby appears healthy and strong," he pronounced. "And you're recovering well from your ordeal. However," his expression grew serious, "you need proper nourishment and rest for these final months. No more fleeing across the wilderness, young lady." "Is it safe for her to travel?" Colton asked from the doorway, having returned from the stables. The doctor considered. "Not for any great distance, and certainly not alone. I'd advise staying put until after the birth, if possible." He packed his instruments, then hesitated. "Mr. Hayes mentioned some of your circumstances, Miss Lawrence. I should tell you that in Riverton, there was indeed talk of a man from Oregon City searching for his missing wife." Lily paled, her hand instinctively moving to protect her belly. "He came through 2 days ago," the doctor continued. "Described you, offered a reward." Most folks seemed sympathetic to his story of a confused, expectant wife wandering off. "Did anyone suspect she might be here?" Colton's voice was tight. "No," Dr. Whitaker assured them. "Few even know of your cabin, Hayes. Those who do wouldn't betray you." He turned back to Lily. "Nevertheless, caution would be wise." After the doctor departed, promising discretion and a return visit in 2 weeks, an uneasy silence fell between Colton and Lily. "I'm sorry for bringing him without warning," Colton finally said. "But when I heard about your husband searching, I wanted to make sure you and the baby were strong enough if we needed to move quickly." "You did the right thing," she assured him, though fear lingered in her eyes. "Thank you." "I bought provisions," he said, changing the subject. "Flour, sugar, coffee, some fabric the storekeeper's wife thought might be useful." He gestured to the packages he'd brought in. "And something else." From his saddlebag, he produced a small paper-wrapped bundle, handing it to her almost shyly. Inside, Lily found a hairbrush with a wooden handle, a small bottle of lavender water, and a cake of fine soap. "Oh," she breathed, touching the items reverently. Such simple luxuries, yet they brought tears to her eyes. "I thought you might like." He trailed off, suddenly uncertain. "They're perfect," she whispered, meeting his gaze with shining eyes. "Truly." Something shifted between them in that moment, a recognition of feelings growing beyond mere gratitude or obligation. Neither acknowledged it aloud, but as they moved around each other preparing a late supper, their awareness had changed. The following days brought summer thunderstorms, confining them to the cabin. Lily used the fabric Colton had purchased to begin sewing baby clothes and a small quilt. He watched her nimble fingers with fascination, occasionally asking questions about her work that made her smile. "Did you learn much about babies, raising your brothers and sisters?" he asked one afternoon as rain drummed on the roof. She looked up from her stitching. "I was an only child, actually, but I helped deliver my cousin's babies back home, 3 of them." Her expression grew wistful. "I always wanted a large family." "You still can," Colton said quietly. Their eyes met across the room, holding a moment too long before Lily looked down, her cheeks flushing. "Perhaps, if I can truly escape Thomas." "You will," he promised. one way or another. The conviction in his voice caused her to study him with new eyes. "You'd really fight for me? Risk everything for someone you barely know?" Colton set aside the harness he was repairing. "I know enough," he said simply. "I know you're brave and strong, kind despite cruelty shown to you, and I know that child deserves a chance at life without fear." He hesitated before adding softly, "As do you." That night, after they had retired to their separate sleeping quarters, Lily lay awake listening to the rain, one hand resting on her rounded belly where the baby kicked energetically. For the first time since discovering her pregnancy, she allowed herself to imagine a future filled with joy rather than dread. A future that, increasingly, included the quiet, steadfast man sleeping just beyond her door. The next morning dawned clear and bright. Colton announced he needed to check his traps and hunt, as their meat supply was dwindling. Lily watched him prepare with a strange sense of foreboding. "Be careful," she said as he shouldered his rifle. He smiled, the expression transforming his usually serious face. "Always am. I'll be back before sunset." The day stretched endlessly as Lily tended the garden Colton had started behind the cabin. The physical work felt good, grounding her. By mid-afternoon, she had harvested enough vegetables for a hearty stew, which now simmered over the fire. She was arranging wildflowers in a tin cup when the sound of approaching horses reached her. Multiple horses, not just Colton returning. Dread washed through her. Moving quickly despite her awkward shape, she retrieved the rifle Colton had shown her how to use, positioning herself where she could see the clearing before the cabin. 3 riders appeared, none of them Colton. The man in front made her blood run cold. Thomas. His ruddy face was partially concealed by a week's growth of beard, but there was no mistaking those cold blue eyes, now narrowed as they surveyed the cabin. Behind him rode 2 men she didn't recognize, rough-looking fellows with the hard expressions of hired guns. "I know you're in there, Lily," Thomas called out, his voice slurring slightly. He'd been drinking. "Might as well come out and face your punishment like a good wife." Lily's hands trembled on the rifle, but she remained silent, hoping they would believe the cabin empty and leave. "We tracked your cowboy friend from town," Thomas continued, dismounting unsteadily. "Followed him to that doctor, heard all about his pregnant guest." He spat on the ground. "Did you spread your legs for him too? Like the whore you are." Rage momentarily overshadowed fear. How dare he? After all his infidelities, his cruelty, "Your protector won't be coming back," Thomas sneered, signaling to his companions. "Found him in the woods, took care of him proper." Horror washed through her. "Colton. No, it couldn't be true. He was too skilled, too careful." "Last chance, Lily," Thomas called, drawing his pistol. "Come out, or we burn this place to the ground with you in it." She knew he meant it. The man was capable of any atrocity when drunk and angry. Decision made, she opened the door, keeping the rifle aimed steadily at her husband's chest. "That's far enough," she commanded as he started forward, her voice stronger than she felt. Thomas laughed, an ugly sound. "Look at you playing the frontier woman. You can barely stand, let alone shoot straight." "I don't need to be an expert marksman at this distance," she replied coldly. "Now all of you get back on your horses and leave." "Not without what's mine," Thomas snarled. "You and that bastard you're carrying." "This child is yours," she said through gritted teeth, "though God knows I wish it weren't. And I stopped being yours the moment you laid hands on me in anger." Thomas's face darkened with rage. "You ungrateful!" The crack of a rifle shot interrupted him, sending dirt spraying near his feet. But it hadn't come from Lily's weapon. "The lady asked you to leave," came Colton's steady voice from the tree line to their right. He emerged slowly, rifle raised, blood staining one sleeve but his aim unwavering. "I suggest you do as she says." Relief made Lily's knees weak, but she maintained her stance and her aim. Thomas turned, his expression a mixture of surprise and hatred. "This doesn't concern you, Cowboy." "She's my wife. She's under my protection," Colton replied evenly, moving to stand beside Lily. "And she's made her wishes clear." One of Thomas's companions shifted nervously. "Lawrence, you didn't say nothing about facing down 2 guns. I ain't getting killed over your woman troubles." "Shut up," Thomas hissed, but uncertainty had crept into his posture. "You're outnumbered," Colton stated matter-of-factly. "And the sheriff in Riverton knows all about you. Sent a telegram to Oregon City this morning asking about a man who beats his pregnant wife." He took a deliberate step forward. "Turns out you're wanted there too. Bar fight that left a man dead. That why you're so eager to find her? Afraid she'll testify?" Thomas's face had gone pale beneath his weathered tan. His companions exchanged alarmed glances. "You're lying," he spat, but his gun hand had begun to tremble. "Marshall's probably on his way here now," Colton continued conversationally. "So you have 2 choices. Leave now, head south, never come back near these parts, or stay and face the hangman." For a terrible moment, Lily thought Thomas would choose violence. His finger twitched on the trigger. Then, abruptly, he holstered his weapon. "She ain't worth hanging for," he muttered, turning to his horse. To his companions he barked, "We're riding south. Now." The men mounted quickly, Thomas pausing only to spit in Lily's direction. "You'll regret this, whore. Both of you." They watched in tense silence as the 3 riders disappeared down the trail. Only when they were completely out of sight did Lily's strength desert her. The rifle slipped from her hands as she sagged against the doorframe. Colton caught her before she could fall, his strong arm encircling her waist. "Easy," he murmured. "It's over now." She turned into his embrace, tears of relief streaming down her face. "I thought they'd killed you," she sobbed against his chest. "Takes more than the likes of them," he assured her, stroking her hair. "They tried to ambush me, but I heard them coming. One got lucky with a graze." He indicated his wounded arm. "Nothing serious." Her fingers found the tear in his sleeve, touching the blood-stained edges gently. "It needs cleaning." "In a minute," he said, his voice suddenly rough with emotion. "Right now, I just need to know you're all right." She looked up, finding his face closer than expected, his eyes dark with feelings that matched the storm in her own heart. "I'm all right," she whispered. "Now that you're here." The kiss happened naturally, inevitably, like the meeting of rain and earth. His lips were gentle at first, questioning, giving her every opportunity to pull away. But Lily leaned in instead, her hands sliding up to his shoulders as she responded with all the emotions she'd kept carefully contained these past weeks. When they finally parted, both breathless, Colton rested his forehead against hers. "I shouldn't have done that," he murmured. "You're vulnerable, you need time, SHH," she interrupted, placing her fingers against his lips. "I know my own mind, Colton Hayes, and my own heart." He searched her eyes for any doubt, finding none. "We should still take things slow," he said softly. "You've been through so much." She nodded, appreciating his restraint even as her body hummed with newfound awareness. "Come inside," she said, taking his hand. "Let me tend that wound. Then we can talk." The evening unfolded in tender care and cautious conversations about possibilities. Lily cleaned and bandaged Colton's arm, her touch lingering on his skin. They discussed Thomas, whether his threats were empty, whether he would truly flee south rather than risk arrest. "We should report this to the sheriff anyway," Colton said as they finished a late supper, "in case he comes back." "Was it true?" Lily asked. "About the telegram and the bar fight?" A slow smile spread across Colton's face. "The telegram, yes. The rest was an educated guess based on the type of man he is. Seems I guessed right." She shook her head in amazement. You risked everything on a guess, for you. His gaze held her steadily. Yes. That night, they slept in their separate rooms as before, but something fundamental had changed. A door had opened between them that could never be closed again. The following weeks brought changes both subtle and profound. Dr. Whitaker visited as promised, pronouncing both Lily and the baby healthy. He brought news that Thomas Lawrence and his companions had indeed been spotted heading south toward California territory, welcome information that allowed them both to breathe easier. Colton began riding into Riverton once a week, bringing back supplies and sometimes letters for Lily, who had started corresponding with the doctor's wife, Martha. The two women had formed a quick friendship during Martha's visit with her husband, and their letters were a welcome connection to the wider world. As August ripened into September, so too did Lily's pregnancy. Her body grew heavier, her movements slower, but there was a radiance about her that had nothing to do with her condition. She and Colton continued to share stories, meals, and increasingly, dreams for the future. What will you do after the baby comes? He asked one evening as they sat by the fire, his question casual though his eyes were anything but. Lily set aside her mending, considering. I haven't decided, she answered honestly. For so long my only thought was escape, survival. She looked at him directly. Now I find myself thinking beyond that. You could stay, he said quietly, if you wanted. The simplicity of his offer belied its magnitude. As what, Colton? He moved from his chair to kneel before her, taking her hands in his. As whatever you wish to be, my friend, my partner. He swallowed hard. My wife in time if you found you could love me. I already do, she whispered, the words falling easily from her lips, truth recognized rather than discovered. But there's the baby to consider. Another man's child. A child who will need a father, he countered. I'd be honored to be that for him or her. His thumbs traced circles on her palms. I've thought about this, Lily. I know it won't be simple. There will be talk, challenges. But if you're willing to face them with me. Her answer was in the tears that spilled down her cheeks, in the way she leaned forward to press her lips to his, in the whispered yes against his mouth. They were married 2 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the Riverton church, with Dr. Whitaker and his wife as witnesses. The small community, knowing little of their story beyond what the doctor had shared that Lily was widowed, expecting, and had found refuge with Hayes, accepted them without question. If there were whispers about the timing, they didn't reach the couple's ears. Colton and Lily returned to the cabin that evening as husband and wife, the September twilight painting the world in soft purple hues. He carried her across the threshold despite her protests about her size, setting her gently on her feet in the main room, which had been transformed with wildflowers and candles. "Welcome home, Mrs. Hayes," he murmured, his voice rough with emotion. That night, they shared the bedroom that had been hers alone, their intimacy limited by her advanced pregnancy but no less profound for it. Colton's hands and lips mapped her changing body with reverence, finding beauty where she had seen only awkwardness. Lily discovered the scars that marked his skin, some from his years working cattle, others from darker times he still rarely discussed. She kissed each one, accepting all he had been and all he was now. As autumn painted the surrounding forests in brilliant gold and crimson, they settled into married life with surprising ease. Colton expanded the cabin, adding a small nursery adjacent to their bedroom. Lily prepared for the birth, sewing constantly, preserving food for winter, creating the home she had always dreamed of. On a crisp October morning, with the first dusting of snow on the distant mountains, Lily's labor began. Colton rode for Dr. Whitaker at a breakneck pace, returning with both the physician and Martha, who took charge with calm efficiency. "First babies often take their time," she assured the anxious Colton, shooing him from the bedroom. "We'll call if we need you." For 18 agonizing hours, Colton paced the cabin, flinching at each cry from the bedroom, praying with an intensity he hadn't felt since Catherine's death. When a different cry finally pierced the air, the indignant wail of a newborn taking its first breath, he stopped mid-stride, his heart suspended between fear and hope. The bedroom door opened and Martha emerged, her face tired but beaming. "Congratulations, Mr. Hayes. You have a son. And your wife is asking for you." Colton entered the room with trembling legs. Lily lay propped against pillows, exhausted but radiant, a small bundle cradled in her arms. She looked up as he approached, her smile so full of love it nearly brought him to his knees. "Come meet your son," she whispered. He sat carefully beside her on the bed, staring in wonder at the tiny red face nested in blankets. A shock of dark hair, a button nose, perfect miniature fingers wrapped around Lily's thumb. "He's beautiful," Colton managed, his voice thick with emotion. "Just like his mother. Would you like to hold him?" Lily asked softly. With infinite care, he took the newborn into his arms, marveling at how something so small could feel so significant. The baby squirmed, eyes opening briefly to reveal unfocused dark blue before settling against Colton's chest with a contented sigh. "What will we call him?" he asked, unable to tear his gaze from his son's face. "I was thinking Charles," Lily suggested. "After your father." Colton looked up in surprise. He had mentioned his father only once, speaking of the values Charles Hayes had instilled in his only son before his passing. "Charles Hayes," he tested the name, feeling its rightness. "Charlie for short." "Perfect," Lily agreed, her eyes beginning to drift closed from exhaustion. "Rest now," Colton murmured, carefully returning the baby to her arms. "You've done the impossible today." "Not impossible," she corrected sleepily. "Just miraculous, Doctor." Whitaker pronounced both mother and child healthy before departing with Martha the next day. The couple settled into the rhythm of new parenthood midnight feedings, endless diaper changes, the constant wonder of watching Charlie discover the world. Winter descended on the cabin, bringing deep snows that isolated them further. Colton kept the woodpile high, hunted when weather permitted, and spent evenings with Lily and Charlie before the fire, reading aloud from his small collection of books or simply talking of the future. "I've been thinking," he said one night as Lily nursed the baby, now a month old and growing steadily, "about building a proper ranch come spring." She looked up with interest. "Here, not far from here. There's good land about 5 miles south, closer to Riverton but still private. Water year-round, plenty of grazing." His eyes took on a distant look, seeing possibilities. "I've saved enough for a small herd to start. With care, we could build something lasting." "For Charlie," Lily said softly, understanding. "For all of us," Colton corrected. "And any brothers or sisters that might come along." The flush that colored her cheeks had nothing to do with the fire's warmth. Though they had resumed marital relations cautiously after Charlie's birth, they had not discussed expanding their family further. The thought sent a pleasant shiver through her. "I'd like that," she admitted. "Though perhaps not right away," he laughed, the sound rich and full. "No rush, we have time." As if understanding he was being discussed, Charlie released Lily's breast with a soft pop, milk-drunk and content. Colton took him gently, settling the baby against his shoulder to pat his back. The easy way he had taken to fatherhood never failed to move Lily's heart. "I never thought I'd have this," she confessed, watching them. "After Thomas, I was just trying to survive, to protect the baby. I never imagined finding love, a real family." Colton's free hand found hers, squeezing gently. Life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. As winter gradually loosened its grip, allowing the first wildflowers to peek through melting snow, plans for the new ranch took shape. Colton made arrangements to purchase land and cattle, hired 2 local men to help with construction, and began hauling lumber from Riverton's sawmill. Lily, with Charlie strapped to her back, planted a larger garden at the cabin, knowing it would be their home until the new house was complete. The baby thrived, growing chubby on his mother's milk, learning to smile and coo at both his parents. If anyone in Riverton harbored suspicions about Charlie's paternity, they kept them private. To the outside world, the Hayes family appeared exactly as they presented themselves: a hard-working rancher, his devoted wife, and their firstborn son. In time, even Lily sometimes forgot that Colton hadn't been there from the beginning, so completely had he embraced fatherhood. Spring brought the cattle drive. Colton had arranged 30 head of prime stock from a rancher further north looking to reduce his herd. With help from his newly hired hands, Jacob and William, he established the animals on their new property, where the main house was rapidly taking shape. By early summer, the ranch house was habitable, if not fully finished. They moved in on a glorious June day, Charlie now crawling everywhere and pulling himself up on furniture, keeping both parents constantly alert. The house was larger than the cabin, with 3 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen, and a covered porch that wrapped around 2 sides. Colton had insisted on large windows to let in light and views of the distant mountains. Lily filled the rooms with simple but comfortable furnishings, many handmade during the winter months, transforming the structure into a true home. They named the property Horizon Ranch for the expansive views and the hopeful future it represented. The brand Colton designed, an H with a rising sun, was approved by the Territorial Registry, and soon marked their growing herd. As summer ripened toward autumn once more, Lily realized she had been in Oregon Territory for nearly a year and a half. The frightened, desperate woman who had collapsed in the wilderness seemed like someone from another lifetime. Standing on the porch, watching Colton work with a young colt in the corral while Charlie played with wooden blocks at her feet, she felt a contentment so complete it almost frightened her. That evening, after Charlie had been tucked into his crib, Lily joined Colton on the porch swing he'd built as a surprise for her birthday. The air was cooling, hinting at the approach of fall, but still pleasant as twilight painted the sky in watercolor hues. "Happy?" Colton asked, his arm around her shoulders, drawing her close against his side. "Completely," she confirmed, resting her head on his shoulder. Then, after a moment's hesitation and perhaps a bit nervous, he turned slightly to see her face. "Oh, what's troubling you?" "Not troubling exactly." She took his free hand, guiding it to rest on her still flat stomach. "Just wondering how Charlie will adapt to being a big brother." Colton went very still beside her, his eyes wide with disbelief and dawning joy. "Lily, are you saying?" She nodded, tears of happiness gathering in her eyes. "Dr. Whitaker confirmed it yesterday when I went into town. We're expecting again, sometime in early spring." His whoop of delight startled a nearby flock of birds into flight. In one fluid motion, he stood and swept her into his arms, spinning her in a circle that left her breathless with laughter. "Careful," she protested, though she clung to his shoulders. "I'm in a delicate condition, remember." He set her gently on her feet but kept her close, one hand reverently touching her abdomen while the other cradled her face. "Another miracle," he whispered. "Our miracle this time." The distinction wasn't lost on her. Though he had never treated Charlie as anything but his own, this child would be connected to him by blood as well as love. "Yes," she agreed softly. "Though you've been Charlie's father in every way that matters since the day he was born." "And always will be," he promised, bending to kiss her with tenderness that quickly deepened into passion. Later that night, lying in each other's arms, they whispered dreams and plans for their growing family. A brother or sister for Charlie. Perhaps more children in the years to come. The ranch expanding, prospering. "What do you think of the name Rebecca if it's a girl?" Lily asked sleepily. "After your mother." Colton's arms tightened around her. "I'd like that very much." As autumn painted the landscape in brilliant hues once more, Charlie took his first steps, toddling unsteadily from Lily to Colton with a look of fierce concentration that made both parents laugh with delight. He was growing into a sturdy, curious boy with his mother's smile, and a temperament that matched his adoptive father's quiet, observant, but capable of surprising mischief. Preparations for winter occupied much of their time preserving the garden's bounty, ensuring sufficient hay for the cattle, weatherproofing the ranch house. Colton hired an additional hand, mindful of Lily's condition and wanting to spend more time close to home. "You don't need to hover," she chided one afternoon, catching him watching her instead of repairing fence as planned. "I'm pregnant, not made of glass." "Humor me," he replied with a grin. "I missed this part before." She softened, understanding his desire to experience every moment of this pregnancy. "Well, in that case," she conceded, taking his hand and placing it where the baby had been kicking energetically. "Feel this." His expression of wonder as he felt their child move never failed to melt her heart. Winter came early that year, with heavy snows blanketing the ranch before November's end. The white landscape created a peaceful cocoon around their home, evenings spent by the fire while Charlie played with the carved animals Colton had made for him. On Christmas Eve, they exchanged simple gifts: a new hat for Colton, handmade by Lily, a silver locket for her, containing a tiny portrait of Charlie that Colton had commissioned during a trip to Oregon City months earlier. For Charlie, there was a rocking horse Colton had crafted in secret, which the boy immediately claimed with squeals of delight. As they prepared for bed that night, Colton drew Lily to the window, where moonlight transformed the snowy landscape into a silver wonderland. "Look out there," he said softly. "All that open space, all that possibility. 2 years ago I had none of this, a solitary man in a small cabin, haunted by what I'd lost." His hand rested on her rounded belly where their second child grew stronger each day. "Now I have everything." "As do I," she whispered, turning in his arms to face him. "You saved more than my life that day, Colton Hayes. You saved my hope, my future, our future." His kiss was a promise, a reaffirmation of all they had built together and all that lay ahead. Spring arrived with its usual unpredictability: warm days followed by sudden snowstorms, new grass pushing through melting drifts. Lily's time grew near, her movements slower but her spirits high as she prepared for the new arrival with Charlie's enthusiastic, if not entirely helpful, assistance. "Baby," he would ask repeatedly, patting her stomach with gentle hands she and Colton had taught him to use. "Soon," she would promise, wondering if at not quite 2 years old he truly understood the concept of a sibling. The baby, however, had plans of her own. Rebecca Hayes arrived on a stormy April morning, a full week before expected, heralded by labor that progressed so quickly Colton barely had time to fetch Martha Whitaker, the doctor himself being away delivering another baby. "Like mother, like daughter," Martha commented as she placed the wailing infant in Lily's arms. "Both of you know exactly what you want and when you want it." Colton, who had been allowed to stay this time at Lily's insistence, stood beside the bed in wonder, one hand supporting Charlie, who had woken and insisted on seeing what the commotion was about. "Baby?" the little boy asked, peering curiously at the red-faced newborn. "Yes, Charlie," Lily confirmed with a tired smile. "This is your sister, Rebecca." "Becca," Charlie declared firmly, reaching out a tentative finger to touch the blanket-wrapped bundle. The name stuck, as did Charlie's immediate devotion to his baby sister. Any concerns about sibling jealousy quickly dissolved, as the toddler appointed himself Becca's protector and chief entertainer, bringing toys for the uncomprehending infant and reading to her from his picture books. With two young children, life at Horizon Ranch took on a joyful chaos that both exhausted and exhilarated Lily and Colton. The cattle business thrived under Colton's careful management, allowing them to expand their herd and hire additional help. Lily, with Martha's encouragement, began providing midwifery assistance to other women in the growing community around Riverton. As the children grew, so did the ranch and their connection to the wider community. By Becca's third birthday, Horizon Ranch had become known for its quality stock, and the Hayes family for their generosity and hospitality. Twice yearly, they hosted gatherings that brought neighbors from miles around for feasting and fellowship, a tradition that began when Lily realized how isolated some of the homesteading families felt. Charlie, now 5, showed a natural affinity for horses that made Colton beam with pride. Just like his father, folks would comment, neither Lily nor Colton ever correcting the assumption. In their hearts and minds, in every way that mattered, Charlie was Colton's son. Becca, with her father's dark hair and her mother's hazel eyes, proved to be a force of nature, stubborn, fearless, and irrepressibly curious. By age 3, she was following Charlie everywhere, insisting she could do everything her brother could, a determination that led to numerous minor injuries and constant vigilance from her parents. "She's going to be the death of me," Lily declared one evening after rescuing Becca from the hayloft, where she'd climbed in pursuit of a kitten. "I swear she has no fear. Reminds me of someone else I know," Colton remarked with a sidelong glance that made Lily blush. "Someone who faced down a drunk, armed husband with nothing but courage and a rifle she barely knew how to use." "That was different," she protested. "That was survival. And in Becca's mind, climbing to rescue a kitten is equally important," he chuckled, pulling Lily into his embrace. "She'll learn judgment in time. Meanwhile, we'll keep watching." Their family expanded again when Lily discovered she was expecting their third child just after Becca's 4th birthday. The news was met with excitement from both children, though Charlie, now nearly 7 and increasingly aware of the world's complexities, had questions. "Where do babies come from?" he asked one evening as Colton tucked him into bed. Colton managed a simplified explanation about seeds and growing that seemed to satisfy the boy temporarily. But Charlie had one more question, one that caught his father off guard. "Pa, was I in Mama's belly before you found her?" A moment of silence hung between them as Colton considered his answer carefully. They had always planned to be honest with Charlie when he was old enough to understand. Perhaps that time was approaching sooner than expected. "Yes," he finally said. "You were in Mama's belly when I found her." "She was alone and needed help," Charlie nodded thoughtfully. "So you saved both of us." "I suppose I did," Colton acknowledged. "But you and Mama saved me too in a different way." "How?" Charlie's eyes were wide with curiosity. "By giving me a family," Colton explained simply. "By making me a father and a husband. That's the greatest gift anyone's ever given me." Charlie considered this, then declared with the certainty of childhood, "I'm glad you found us, Pa." "So am I, son," Colton replied, his voice thick with emotion. "More than you'll ever know." In November of 1861, as distant rumblings of civil war reached even their remote corner of Oregon, Lily gave birth to their third child, a robust boy they named Daniel. after Lily's father. The delivery was the easiest of her three, a fact she attributed to experience while doctor. Whitaker credited her excellent health and the peaceful life at Horizon Ranch. With 3 children under the age of 9, life became a whirlwind of activity, joy, and occasional chaos. Colton expanded the house again, adding rooms as the family grew. Lily started a small school for their children and those of neighboring ranches, using the education her father had given her to ensure the next generation would be prepared for whatever future awaited them. As the years passed, the story of how Colton had found Lily became part of family lore, told and retold, though always with certain details adjusted depending on the age of the listeners. The children grew strong and healthy, each developing distinct personalities that delighted and occasionally exasperated their parents. Charlie, serious and thoughtful like Colton, showed not only a gift with horses, but also a keen mind for business that would eventually help expand Horizon Ranch into one of the territory's most successful operations. Becca's fearlessness evolved into determined independence that would later lead her to become one of the first female doctors in the state. Daniel, the peacemaker, grew into a gentle giant with a talent for storytelling that entranced everyone who met him. On a golden autumn afternoon in 1869, 15 years after Colton had found a desperate, pregnant woman too weak to speak, he and Lily stood on the porch of their home, watching their 3 children race across the meadow that stretched before the house. At 47 and 41, respectively, they had weathered storms both literal and figurative, building a life richer than either had dared to dream. "You ever wonder," Lily asked softly, "what might have happened if you hadn't ridden that particular trail that day?" Colton's arm tightened around her waist. "Sometimes. But then I look at them," he nodded toward their laughing children, "and at you, and I know some things are simply meant to be." She turned in his arms, seeing the same strength and kindness in his face that had given her hope on that desperate day so long ago. The years had added silver to his hair, lines around his eyes, but to Lily, he was more handsome than ever. "You were right, you know," she said, resting her head against his chest. "I never did have to explain a thing." "And yet you gave me everything," he replied, lifting her chin gently to meet her gaze. "A family, a purpose, a love I never thought I'd find again." As the sun began its descent behind the mountains, painting the sky in hues of rose and gold, Colton Hayes kissed his wife with the same tenderness he had shown that first time, when both were uncertain of the future, but willing to risk their hearts. Behind them, the house they had built together stood strong and welcoming. Before them, their children's laughter carried on the autumn breeze, a testament to the life they had created from the most unexpected of beginnings. And in that perfect moment, both knew with absolute certainty that when a cowboy had found a pregnant woman too weak to speak, and had said those simple words, "You don't have to explain a thing," it had been the beginning of not just a rescue, but a love story that would endure through all the seasons of their lives.